The U.S. poverty rate goes up and down, but there's practically no improvement from where it was 50 years ago. That was the beginning of the federal government's war on poverty. Here in Massachusetts, there's a new report on ways to help more people in poverty make headway toward a better life. The report was made possible by a number of groups, including the United Way and the Boston Foundation. To tell us about the report, our guests from two anti-poverty organizations, the executive director of the Massachusetts Association for Community Action, or MASSCAP, Joe Diamond, and the executive vice president and chief operating officer of ABCD, Sharon Scott-Chandler. Thank you both very much for being with us.
Thank you.
I want to start with Joe. I had that big picture there, but so why have this report now?
Well, it's always important that we visit and revisit the issue of poverty and inequality. Our mission, and it's actually written into the language that creates us, is to engage with our local communities and to address poverty every single day. And so while we do that in ways big and small, we also think it's really important to increase awareness with a number of audiences and make sure that we get the dialogue going and reinvigorate the dialogue about why it's important to address poverty in Massachusetts, and more importantly, why it's important to address inequality in Massachusetts. We find that poverty has dropped slightly since the 1960s in Massachusetts, but Massachusetts remains one of the most unequal states in the country.
Sharon Scott-Chandler, one of the things I think is going to be brought up at the upcoming forums here is about the invisibility of poverty and how it isolates people from, help. Explain that.
Well, I think a lot of people are, we've come to sort of shame people into thinking that if they have low incomes or if they're struggling to make ends meet, that they shouldn't be out in the public, that there's nowhere to turn. And of course, an organization like ours on the ground, we see it. And that's what we try to do is make sure people don't feel isolated, whether it's housing issues, whether it's education and early childhood education and things like that, is bringing them out, knowing that the resources are there and that they can seek help and get help.
Joe, when people hear that the poverty rate hasn't improved that much over several decades, they say, well, that shows the programs don't work. But wait, what else has been going on in that interim?
Well, it's a great question. We found, actually, in a predecessor report to this one, and it remains true today, that if not for the work that we do, not for our programs like fuel assistance and Head Start and housing programs, and also programs like the Earned Income Tax Credit and food stamps, over 800,000 people in Massachusetts would be below poverty. So our programs are a way of helping as many people as possible, but there are structural factors too. Wages just have not gone up enough. And there are some adjustments to the way that programs are delivered as well that could improve things. But it's really the structure of the economy that makes it really difficult for folks who are working. Most of the people that we work with are working. And so it's incumbent on us to have this discussion like we're going to have on next Wednesday, and then 4 other places around the Commonwealth, in Quincy, in Lawrence, in Worcester, and in Western Mass, about the very issue that you bring up, how we can address it together in sort of current ways and new ways. But the important thing is that we talk about it so that we can come together over time with a real firm commitment from not only all of us, but from the people that we work with, businesses, and elected officials as well.
Sharon Scott-Chandler, one hurdle that your agency has dealt with over the years is that you can help people with training and other services, and they'll make progress, but it's hard for them to make that quantum leap to self-sufficiency. Is there a new way to help them with that?
Well, I think having more collaboration and effort with industry. I mean, Boston and Massachusetts is booming, and in many areas, and we really have to be intentional about the skills that people have and the jobs that we have, and how do we match those. And once, as Joe said, once we can get folks to a place where they can get a livable wage, then we can make some headway with their sort of becoming economically stable. I mean, self-sufficiency is kind of a a phrase, but it's really stability first and then opportunity to prosper and to get further in their economic situation.
Joe, I guess also an issue here is the image of poverty, because politically, it goes to extremes. And at one end, people are bashing the poor. It's almost as if they're lifetime dependents. Talk about what people are really doing, and when they emerge beyond dependency.
Well, it's a great question, and part of that has to do with context. We're concerned about the federal context, and that has to do with proposals that have come from the administration to reduce the safety net considerably over many years. So that kind of operating in the background is something that we are very concerned about. But the fact is that the folks that we work with are just like everybody else. And there's a very human face to this, and what we want to try to make sure that we hit home is that by working on the programs that we work with, by talking about poverty, by getting involved with all of the issues and all of these programs, that we are helping each other, that there's a moral, economic, social, political reason to address poverty. It's not just because the people who we are helping are the other, it's all of us.
Sharon, how do you feel when you see what's coming out of the Trump administration? Make people work for their food stamps, raise their rents in Section 8?
Well, I think as Joe said, most of the people that we serve do work. I mean, people want to work. I mean, it's not really about forcing people to work for something else. It's about dignity and as you said, economic stability. I think that it's a lot more complicated than that, because as you've already pointed out, we need to look at new strategies. You can't just say, go to work. I mean, people have to have skills, they have to have childcare, they have to have housing. It's an integrated system that moves people out of poverty, and to simply say there's a quid pro quo here when there aren't jobs that are appropriate for the folks that we're serving. I think yes, we all want that. I think everyone who we work with actually wants a job if they're physically able. But it's more complicated than just saying, oh, go to work. And so that's why we find it challenging. Not that we're opposed to helping people get jobs and move themselves up, but there's a lot that goes into that, including health and housing and all the other things.
This is BNN News, and we're talking with Sharon Scott-Chandler from ABCD and Joe Diamond from MASSCAP. Sharon, what about things that you think are effective? What would you say?
Well, we know that the programs that we provide are effective in helping to stabilize families and communities and inspire mobility, economic mobility. We can start with up to 75 different programs and ABCD is a great example, that are integrated together. People come to the agency and they are assessed once for whatever is needed, and then the services are sort of arranged properly. Fuel assistance helps stabilize homes. It helps people keep their homes, but it also helps people stay in their homes and improves their health. The earned income tax credit helps people get by tough times. It increases their income, and also studies have shown it improves health. Of course, all of the homelessness prevention programs are critical. And through the spectrum of programs, workforce development and workforce training programs are also really important. And then something else that we have to constantly talk about is the importance of early education and care programs across the Commonwealth that we run and others run, which are so crucial to families. They're in some sense unsung, but they're so critical. And about Head Start, of course, that's one of them. But those programs and others combined together on a local basis is what makes what we do, what ABCD does, so very powerful.
Sharon, it sounds like a push to get resources that have been hard to get in the past. So what does that mean for advocacy?
Well, I think advocacy, we really need to, and this is part of what the forum, we're hoping to do with this particular forum and launching the report and the other series forms of events that we're going to do, is really to have resources focused in the right place, and that's part of the advocacy. It's almost a call to action to say we do need these resources, and they need to be targeted, and they need to be in all areas that we can afford.
Joe, one thing I remember about the earliest advocacy, if you go back to the 1960s maybe, is the power of personal stories. But I guess there's a risk that it's just like an interest group. Don't you need other people to plug into that and show it's not just about them, it's about all of us?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great point. I mean, the power of personal stories and the advocacy that took place in the early days of community action is really critical, and that continues. And we actually would like this process to evolve, enhance our ability to work with the people that we serve in terms of empowering their ability to advocate for themselves. But it's a much bigger tent. That's why we're in the case of ABCD's forum in Boston and the others, bringing in different voices to talk about why this is so important. Business voices, research voices, elected official voices, practitioner voices, and the people that we serve, their voices too. So we want to make sure that the perspectives are shared, and we want to continue to share those perspectives over time.
Sharon, how do you do that? Because that sounds like an important part of your job at ABCD.
Oh yes, as we've done for many, many years, it is getting that dialogue, engaging both the community, the low-income community, policymakers, practitioners, and really together making some strides in helping people be economically stable.
George, you mentioned, tell me a little bit about the forum coming up and how people can get some more information about that.
Well, certainly folks can go to our websites. Ours is www.masscap.org, MASSCAP, and
it's also on our website, which is www.bostonabcd.org. And we're having our moderator is Adrian Walker, and he's going to really help us.
From the Boston Globe, right?
From the Boston Globe, engage in a discussion both of policy and of practice.
Right, well, thank you both very much. Joe Diamond and Sharon Scott-Chandler.